All right, guys, I am excited. This is a really important topic today. Get this. Every 40 seconds, someone somewhere in the world takes their own life. And there's 123 suicides a day in the US alone. If those statistics don't grab you, this one just floored me and broke my heart. The second leading cause of death in the world for people aged 15 to 24 is suicide. That's nuts. Now, I know, this is a heavy subject. And, with this podcast, we're all about helping you dream bigger, think better, and do more of what you were created to do. And if we're going to be true to that mission, if we're going to be true to that mandate, that means we can't shy away from tough subjects like this, right? That's why I'm so excited about this conversation and our guest today. We're going to be talking with Ben Courson. You may be familiar with Ben. He's amazing. He's an international speaker. He's a best-selling author, TV and radio personality. He's also senior pastor at Applegate Christian Fellowship in Jacksonville, Oregon. He's done all of this. Get this. He's done all of this while still being in his 20s. Hello, right? His TV show called Hope Generation with Ben Courson is broadcast in 180 countries, and his radio show airs in more than 400 stations nationally. Now, here's the thing. His latest book is called Flirting with Darkness. And in it, he talks about his own journey of overcoming depression and battling with thoughts of suicide. He also offers up some really specific strategies to help you if you've been tempted by suicidal thoughts or if you know somebody that's wrestling with that. Ben's team reached out, and since World Suicide Prevention Day is September 10th, and because this stuff with COVID and all the wildness that 2020 has thrown at us, we thought this was a really important subject and a wildly relevant time to go after it. So let's do this. Ben Courson, welcome to Dream, Think, Do, brother.
I'm so stoked. I'm so glad we're going to do this. And you know what? I found out just before we began recording that you have a Jeep Wrangler and I have a Jeep Wrangler. I took all the doors off. I took the top off. So I think this show is going to be like a Jeep ride.
This is a full-on Jeep ride. I got to tell you. And right after this, I'm going out in my Jeep as well. So, man, we are brothers. I've felt it from the beginning. So I love it.
100%.
I love it. All right. So now I want to say I took some of those statistics from your book. I'm diving into your book. I am blown away. I'm heartbroken. But I also really do believe that suicide has always been an important topic, but I think right now, like I mentioned, with COVID and all of this stuff and the social isolations and, all that is just stirring up all the more. So I really want to go after this, but you started writing this way before COVID was on anybody's radar.
I started writing this a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I turned, I'm really into turning stuff in far ahead of deadline just because of my obsessive compulsive disorder. So I turned it in like 10 months in advance, and then me and the editor kept going back and forth, even semi-recently. But ultimately, when he wanted me to make some corrections, but what's wild is what I didn't foresee is COVID-19, the coronavirus pandemic, creating this panic so that Americans are reporting 50% of Americans are reporting that coronavirus is impacting their mental health and exacerbating their mental illness and their depressive anxiety. So nearly half, one hotline reports that since the coronavirus, it's increased, like one hotline when it comes to suicide prevention or anxiety has increased by 1,000%. So,
oh my gosh,
I mean, even
that's
before
incredible.
this,
that's an insane number, right? Like that's horrifying, but it makes sense.
Even before this, USA Today reported that there are 123 suicides per day. So ultimately, it's my heart to be a hope apologist, to be like somebody who gives a reason for the hope that's within me. And ultimately, you look at social activists who are trying to cure HIV and cancer. You look at medical scientists who have cured polio and are looking to cure the next maladies with the new Nepenthe. I'm trying to be a hope dealer who cures suicide, because if suicide is one of the top 10 leading causes of death, and that's true, it's one of the top 10 leading causes of death, then my goal is to provide a cure that's stronger than the sickness.
I love that, and I celebrate it, and that's exactly why we're talking. So, and here's what's also important for everybody to understand. I always joke that if I want to learn to lose weight, I don't want to learn from somebody who's always been 2% body fat. You know what I mean? I want to learn from
Yeah.
somebody who is fluffy and who's
There you
now
go.
in good condition, right?
There you go.
And I think that's why I think this why this book and for such a time as this, you know, with this book for you, because this is not something you're just writing about that you have, you know, distant knowledge of. This is something you've experienced and had to really battle back from. So tell us a little bit about that for you.
Yeah, when I was in elementary school, my sister, she was 16 years old. She passed away in a car accident.
Yeah.
And then my brother a year and a half ago passed away from stage 4 colon cancer. My dad's first wife died. I literally, like, when I go on TV or radio or whatever,
Yeah.
I have a guy who stalks me and follows me around, like digitally calling ahead of time, like news stations and stuff, trying to like get me off TV because he's hated my family since I was a little kid. So
Wow.
now he's following me around. And I went through 10 years of chronic suicidal depression, 10 years of suicide ideation. I mean, at a certain point, I'd taken up a knife to kill myself. I would ride a rocket motorcycle I didn't really know how to ride the full thing. I didn't have a license, no helmet, just as fast as I could to almost court
Wow.
death. I still love adrenalized, like pushing the envelope, but
Yeah.
I would go up to like a tall building and walk on the railing, like knowing if I fell over, I could die, because I was kind of like Albert Camus. He was a French absurdist philosopher who basically concluded that life is a Sisyphean quest of rolling a boulder uphill only for it to roll back down, roll it uphill, it rolls back down. He's basically arguing that life is utterly absurd,
Right.
utterly absurd. And so he went in a car with a notoriously reckless driver, and the car crashed and he died. So he like was a passive victim. So he didn't actively take his life into
Right.
his own hands. He just was a passive victim. So I was kind of doing things like that. Where
Yeah.
kind of flirting with death, but never quite committing the deed. And so ultimately, what my thing is I remember I talked to my counselor. I was seeing a therapist, and who's been amazingly helpful for me. And my therapist told me, you have one of the most difficult cases of depression I've ever had to treat. So
Wow. Congratulations.
I know, congrats. When you talk about somebody being fluffy, then 2%, that's really the case for me on
Wow.
a metaphorical level,
Yeah.
because she diagnosed me with complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Wow.
And so my whole message is simply this: if I can get healed,
Right.
anybody can get healed.
Yeah.
If I
For
can
real.
find hope, and I have, anybody can find hope. So it's not just like distant, secondhand, vicarious knowledge of some therapeutic, cathartic, cure-all panacea out there somewhere. This is like embodied and fleshed out in my life. So I
Yeah.
know this struggle, but I also know this victory.
Absolutely. And that's exactly why we're talking, because it's one of those that I think people can be dismissive of this subject. People can talk down, to those who are experiencing these kinds of emotions and these feelings. It's like, we don't want to do that at all. Right. And that's why I love your message. That's why I love the timing of this. Now, I wanted to ask you too, on that line of thinking and that question. I mean, you mentioned, working with the therapist, those kinds of things. I wondered for you, was there some catalytic moment that made you say, I got to get help with this? Or was it more of a gradual thing where you just started to kind of work on this over time? How is that for you? Because I'm just thinking through that person. I've dealt with depression in my life, never to the point of probably, really truly contemplating suicide, but I've dealt with it. But I know that, for some, that's a big thing. And I think I'm just wondering, for that person that's listening, that's maybe wrestling with this a little bit, that it's that question of, when should they seek help? How should they seek help? So let's hear about that part of it from your story.
Well, if anything, I was a little late and belated,
Ah,
because it got so bad for me that I described it as it felt like a demon from hell took a lighter and lit my brain on fire. Like, it felt
wow.
like every moment I was burning alive. Like, it was that bad. I couldn't even emotionally or mentally function. It
Yeah.
was so bad. I would actually lay in bed and imagine I could see witches cackling in my face. So I'm talking about real mental illness.
This is
I'm not
dark
talking
stuff.
about,
Yeah.
this
Right.
is dark
Absolutely.
stuff. So I went late, but this is what I want to encourage people in. Seeing a counselor is not a sign of weakness. In
Oh,
fact,
absolutely.
there are people professionally trained to help you. There are people who are professionally trained,
Right.
who are not surprised, who can help you out. And I want to tell people, a lot of people are afraid to get counsel because they think if I struggle with depression, that means I'm weak. Actually, historically, the opposite is true. So I
Yep.
just want to kind of encourage people that you're not alone if you struggle with depression and you need to seek help. So Calvin Coolidge, our 30th president, he oversaw the Roaring 20s. He himself went through depression while in office when his son died.
Wow.
You look at somebody like Buzz Aldrin, who walked in space for 5 hours and 37 minutes, second guy on the moon. What do you do after you walk on the moon? He came back to Earth, struggled with great depression,
Yeah.
mental illness. You look at somebody like Kurt Cobain of Nirvana and Greg Louganis, the Olympic gold medalist, and Janet Jackson, the singer. These people all struggle with depression. Ernest Hemingway was so depressed that he killed himself.
Right.
So some of the most creative people, Winston Churchill talks about being hunted by the black dog of depression. Carrie Fisher, who played Princess Leia in Star Wars, she had manic depression.
Yeah.
Some of the people that we look at who have made the greatest impact in the arts or in history, they also struggled with depression. Abraham Lincoln suffered bouts of melancholia. He would walk in the woods alone with a shotgun, tempted to kill himself. So
Wow.
some of the greatest minds have burned in their own creative fire. So you're not alone in this. In fact, you're in really good company.
That's the great illustration, great point, and I couldn't agree with you more. So let's talk about that. I know in the book you start to dive into, or you really do dive into some specific things that you did, but also things that you really recommend to others, no matter where they're at on that spectrum. And a lot of them are just good, healthy suggestions for better living, right? But it's that. So let's just say that either somebody's dealing with some of these feelings of depression and maybe even tempted by suicidal thoughts, or they know somebody that's dealing with that right now. What are some of those first things that you really recommend?
Well, I actually lay out in the book 11 weapons to defeat the dark lord of depression. I'll give you 3 of them. I'll give you 3 of them right now that I think will be really good for your audience. One of them is neuroplasticity. So basically, Daniel Amen has done more brain scans than anyone in history on people. So he's done 83,000 brain scans on people. That's a lot of brain scans.
That's pretty good. I've done a few myself, but not 83,000. Okay.
You brain scan people?
No.
Have you really? I didn't think you were a neurologist. So Dr. Daniel Amen, he does 83,000 brain scans.
Yeah.
And you know what his number one thing he found as far as a common denominator is this: the brain can change.
Yeah.
The brain can change. So a lot of us think we're psychologically stuck because of genetic determinism with our psychological equipment. But the truth is you're not. You're not. You can change it. It's through rote and repetition, continually orienting your thoughts toward the light again and again. You actually retrain the grooves in your brain into better neural pathways. So you actually shape the malleable gray matter in your brain and your prefrontal cortex, your amygdala, your anterior cingulate cortex, your hippocampus, your cerebellum. Your brain is plastic. It can change. And so you're not stuck with where you're at. And that's what I want to encourage people is like Antonio Damasio, a neuroscientist, said that this is crazy, 95% of the time. And by the way, before I say this stat, you said this is tips for healthier, better living. That's why I tell people this book isn't just for people with depression. This is like a book to like really succeed in overall holistic living. But basically, Antonio Damasio said 95% of the time our feelings decide for us, which is wild. We make 35,000 choices a day, and 95% of the time, it's our feelings that decide for us. Now, would any of you trust a friend that lied to you as much as your feelings do? Right, our emotions lie. Right. And so research shows that over and over again, research shows this, that we will opt for what feels good rather than what we know will benefit us in the long run. So so I want to tell you, fight for what you don't feel. When you go through difficulty, count it all joy because your obstacle is an opportunity, and start orienting your thoughts toward the light, even if you don't feel it. Remember that, like, this is called cognitive restructuring among Navy SEALs. I'm going through SEAL training with one of my friends right now. Like he was Navy SEAL Team 1, Navy SEAL Team 7. He's taking me through SEAL training, and what SEALs do is they practice cognitive restructuring. So, for example, some of the teams, like if they're getting shot at or getting hypothermia in the Coronado Bay of San Diego, or they're going through 96 hours of sleep deprivation during Hell Week, what they'll do is they'll say good times when it's actually terrible. And through cognitive restructuring, they retrain their brain to think it's good times and they actually enjoy it. And that's, I don't know if you've ever found that, but like I enjoy pushing my body to its limit.
Absolutely. When
I
you choose
enjoy
it, right? Like when you
when
choose
you
it,
choose it.
you can totally look at it with dread, or you can go, this is awesome. And you
Awesome.
can flip your brain. Absolutely.
You can retrain your brain and reframe your pain, and that neuroplasticity is huge. The second thing I want to say
Yep.
is friend ventures. Friend
Yes.
ventures.
Love
Like
this.
go
Love
on
this concept.
adventures
Yes.
with your friends.
Yep.
We are a generation that lives indoors. There used to be this thing called Blockbuster where you had to go outside to rent your movie.
Tell me more about this thing. Yeah.
Nowadays, the downfall of Blockbuster, the rise of Netflix, Uber Eats, you can literally live if you have a white collar job, hypothetically, you can live the rest of your life indoors, never going outside.
True.
And so no wonder we're depressed. Like we got to go outside, go on adventures with God, adventures with squad. That's what I always tell people, but get around people that will encourage you to live life more hopefully, more optimistically, and more fully. Speaking of dream, think, do, like Aristotle said, the only way to avoid criticism is to say nothing, to do nothing, and to be nothing. So that's like the antonym of what we're trying to do.
Yep.
So dreamers, what they tend to do, people who do, they tend to flock together. So like if you look at Henry Ford, Harry Firestone, and Thomas Edison in Florida, they all live next to each other in their summer vacation homes. So they would have homes next to each other in Florida. Why? Because dreamers flock together. Listen, I can tell you who you are based on the 5 friends you hang out with the most. Like you average them out. So I would say friend ventures. I would say neuroplasticity. And the third thing and last little tip I'll give, and then the rest you can just read about. But basically, the third one is endorphins. I know this sounds a little millennial, but it's huge. We have in our bodies
absolutely
these opioid receptors called endorphins that are akin to the drug morphine, that are natural painkillers chemically in our bodies that we can activate through exercise. So going on a 40-minute jog, science tells us, has the same effect on your brain as a strong antidepressant. And that's why they call it a runner's high, or it's akin to the drug morphine. So when you activate, and by the way, I think there is a place for medication for a lot of people, like actual medication. I think that can be a good thing. At the same time, I will say this. You have natural painkillers, morphine, like opioid receptors called endorphins in your body that you activate through exercise. And it's really hard to be depressed, when you just conquered a mountain. You know what I mean?
For real.
So those are a few things.
I love that. And I love the tactical aspects of it. And I love that all of those things are kind of immediately available to us. Now the friend ventures, like that's something we do have to be intentional with, right? Like that's something that, well, we have to be intentional with all of it. But I think when I was reading through, that idea, that concept, that strategy, I'm like, this is brilliant, but this is also going to involve some people probably letting go of some relationships, or spending, choosing to spend less time with certain people and saying, you know what, I need to go and find people who really do help me to move into a better space mentally, spiritually, physically. And that's an intentional thing. And I know some of my friendships have evolved over time as well. You have to be intentional with that.
Mm-hmm. One of my best friends, Corey, he's like, you know why you have such a great group of friends, Ben? Because you built them from scratch. A lot of times we think, I have to keep hanging out with the people I grew up with.
Right.
Like, oh, they were my friend in elementary school. So like, don't get me wrong. We need to love everybody. Like
Absolutely.
We need to love
No
everybody.
doubt.
But as far as like investing into, this is going to be my adopted family, my brother for life. The problem is your courses are going in different directions many times. And what happens when you grow up and when you become an adult, or my generation's language, adulting, like you need to start figuring out who's going on the same path I am. And then you get around those people. And I think that sometimes that does mean letting go of toxic relationships, loving on those people, but investing in new friendships where people have akin spirits and similar like minds to each other. I think that's super important to invest in that.
I love that. So, and I think it is wildly, wildly important. It's one of those that I think that's something we innately know, but I was so glad that you called that out and then actually gave, specific tools to it, right? So, some, because I think that's something that it really is something we have to be intentional about. So I love that. So, man, we can keep going for hours. I've got 2 more. I'll just say 2 more questions.
Sounds good.
Question is around, I know that for you, like you come from a faith background, we share that. all of those things. You've mentioned you worked with a therapist, a counselor, you mentioned being pro medication. I think that's something I just want to touch on really quickly, because I think that's something that there really is kind of a stigma to both of those things. But I think it's wildly important. Those are two tools that I think are wildly powerful. And, in our verbiage, God can work through those as well, right? Like it's that kind of thing. So when you think about when somebody should go and say, you know what, maybe I should go see a therapist, maybe I should, investigate maybe doing some medication, those kinds of things. When you start that process, when you were going through that process, what were some of the decision-making factors that you made as you started to actually utilize some of those tools yourself?
Well, my sister said you need help. Like it was sometimes it's not
sibling catalyst. That's what I call that.
The catalyzing of my sister Mary. She's the impetus. She's like, you need help. And here's the thing. I had gone to another counselor a couple years ago because I went through I was in an 8-year relationship and went through romantic heartbreak that left me like a robot with dead batteries. I was devastated. So I had to work through that as well, along with all the other stuff I've been through.
Yeah.
So basically, I didn't have a good experience with that counselor. The counselor was a good guy. Good guy, but it just wasn't a good fit. So like he called me Little Ben, for example. He wanted me to address the Little Ben. And I'm like, okay, I understand Freudian infantile sexuality, the Oedipus complex, Jungian dream analysis, Viktor Frankl's logotherapy, Adlerian power grabs. Like, I don't want to be a target where you're quoting the psychological book at me. I've already read this stuff. So then I found another counselor that my sister was going to.
Yeah.
And this counselor uses the talk cure, which I love. And that's, you're talking through it. And a lot of times you find your own answers in just talking through it.
Yeah.
But that talk cure mindset was really big. So I just want to say, if you don't find the right fit right off the bat, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to find another good fit. It does take work, but this is what I said. I said, I will claw my way out of this pit. And I think you have to have that warrior mindset. Like we are fighting the dark lord of depression here. Like you have to determine in your mind, I will claw out of this pit. I don't care if it breaks my body. I don't care if I go insane. I will fight and fight and fight. I'm going to do MI5, Navy SEAL Team 6, DEFCON 1, paratrooper, recon, Green Beret, Delta Force on this dark lord of depression. Like you got to fight. And so it does take work. It does take intentionality, but like we're warriors. What if a warrior said, oh, to the general, I don't like the work. Like he'd say, give me 100 push-ups right now. You know what I mean? So,
you're going to start liking the work or you're going to get a lot quieter.
And Marines love to be miserable. Like they like the worst equipment. They like the coldest chow. They prefer to be miserable because it's like a badge of honor. Like I accomplished all this with that equipment. So I think we have to have that mindset. Like we're fighters, we're warriors. We're going to fight through this thing. And so sometimes that does mean making intentional decisions like, oh, this therapist didn't work, but I'm going to try another one. I'm going to find something until it works. The other thing I will say real quick about that is the stigma attached to it. Jonas Hanway, when he introduced the umbrella to the UK, people insulted him. Like they would assault him with insults because think of the first guy walking down a street with an umbrella. We're so used to it, but the guy who brought it to the UK, he was ridiculed. You look at James Simpson. James Simpson. A.B. Simpson was a writer. James Simpson, the inventor of chloroform, which is a form of anesthetic, which has saved the world in the 19th century from more pain than any form of medication ever. It's where we get anesthetics from, chloroform. He was criticized by like the puritanical mindset. They're like, no, pain purges the soul. Medication's bad. Chloroform's bad. So what I'm saying is the same happened with planes, trains, computers, cars. Like whenever a new invention comes, it's treated with suspicion. So we're in the pioneering phases of like selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors with medication, or even psychology therapy. It's relatively new in human history in the way that people are exploring it now. So there's a lot of taboo and stigma attached to that, but that's always how it is in pioneering works.
That's awesome. Guys, can you see why I love this guy? Like absolutely brilliant. So here's the thing.
So just don't worry about the taboo is what I'm saying.
Right. That's exactly right. And it's that anytime you want to change things, people around you may or may not understand, but it is that commitment. It is that commitment to say, I'm going to claw my way out. and also obviously pray for those around you to be able to say, hey, I'm with you on that, you know, and to find those people that will help to support and encourage you. And I do think finding a therapist is a little bit like dating. Right? Like you gotta, you just can't automatically assume it's going to be a good fit.
I've never thought of that.
Like, you know, and especially if it's going to be a long-term relationship, right? You don't, you know, sometimes that first date leads to marriage, but a lot of times it doesn't, right? So it's to be able to say therapy, I think is the same thing. And there's nothing wrong with that either. So
that's good.
I love it. All right. Last question. And I'm even going to give you a second to think about it. Okay. So here's the thing for that person that's like, Ben, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling hope. I'm feeling like, okay, some breakthrough. I'm seeing some sunlight coming through. Maybe they've been dealing with the darkness, all of that. What's that one last thing you want to encourage them with? Okay. And I'll let you think about that for just a second. So, hey guys, we have been talking with Ben Courson. I bet you love him as much as I do. Absolutely fantastic. You got to go check out his work. His most recent book is what we've been talking about, Flirting with Darkness. It's going to be available on Amazon. Go grab it. You will thank yourself. Whether you're dealing and wrestling with depression, if you're dealing with suicide, obviously go grab this and get some help there. But also, as you can tell, this is something that's going to be helping everybody to live and truly dream bigger, think better, and do more. You can find out more about Ben at bencourson.com. We'll have all the links to all of his social, all of that within this post as well. So, all right. Did I give you enough time?
Oh yeah.
All right, and Ben, what would you say? What's that last thing you'd want to offer that dream think doer that's like, just bring me home, buddy?
I think I'm going to go in an eponymous direction here, dream, think, do. And go with a dream quote, because this was huge for me. You will have nightmares and you will have dreams, but you conquer your nightmares because of your dreams. So you cannot let your nightmare become more powerful in your heart than your dream. In fact, your nightmare is the very thing that is preparing you for your dream. Isn't that true in every great story?
Yep.
That your nightmare is creating a steely resolve in you and an iron soul. It's like Hell Week for Navy SEALs. Yep. It's training you so that you're strong enough to handle the dream when it comes. So you will have your nightmares and you will have your dreams, but you will conquer your nightmares because of your dreams. That's what I would tell people.
And that's a good word. I love it, brother. Thanks so much for being so generous. Thanks for the wisdom. Thanks for what you're doing. And I know Dream Think Doers are going to be all over this and supporting you big time.
I love you, dude. Jeep brothers for life.
Once a Jeep brother,
baby. Always a Jeep brother. I loved it. Thanks, dude. I had a blast.